Greetings, friends. Welcome to the Let's Get Gritty podcast with yours truly, Dr. India White. This is a special episode tonight. I'm super honored to highlight some amazing people in this session. But before I get started, I do want to make some announcements. First things first, the Let's Get Gritty podcast with Dr. India White will be featured on Spotify and all of the main social media platforms. In addition to that, you can follow me on those social media platforms to get this podcast. Facebook is Miss India White. LinkedIn is The India White. Twitter is Indie Speak and Teach. Instagram is Indie238. YouTube is India White 123. And TikTok is Dr. India White. Check out the website, www.india-white.com for books, blogs, or to schedule me for a speaking and coaching event. Also, speaking of events, we have the virtual math conference coming up with the math elementary education. Thank you, Melanie, for the opportunity. We also have NCSM and NCTM around the corner, along with Making Math Moments Conference and the Black Kids Love Math Summit in November in California. I'm super thrilled to be connected with each of you because we are really in the trenches together doing this great work. And so I also want to remind you of the Grit Mini Workshop that's on the Grassroots Workshops website. Thank you, Robert Kaplinsky, for that opportunity. Go check that out when you guys get a chance. If you have any children that need tutoring, then send them my way. I'd be honored to work with you in online tutoring opportunities for your students. And so with that said, this is a really, really special episode because this, my friends, is the official book launch of our book titled Effective Teaching Practices That Every Teacher Must Know. And so with that said, I'm honored to bring on some of the authors that did this work. This took us several months to really put this together, and we're so happy that it is now on Amazon. It is on my website, and you can also contact each of the authors directly to find out how you can go about getting your copy for yourself, your school district, and beyond. So with that said, I am thrilled to bring on part of my tribe, these wonderful authors. I'm going to bring on Debbie Perry and TJ Hemison. Welcome to the Let's Get Gritty podcast. How's it going, guys?
Great. How are you?
I am well. I'm just so honored that you guys are here with me, just celebrating this wonderful, amazing book launch. We finally got it done.
Finally.
So listen, the audience might not know who you guys are. So if you can you tell me a little bit about yourself?
My name is Debbie Perry. I am an elementary education teacher. I have been teaching for about 35 years. I am located in Palm Beach County, Florida. I have focused on math instruction most of my career. I have also taught in STEM education. Right now, I'm focused on pre-kindergarten through third grade, teaching in a science lab. So that has been a lot of fun. And helping teachers, I have served as president and other leadership roles in my local math council. And in the state math council, I have served as elementary vice president.
Very nice. Wow. That's very impressive. And I'm so grateful that you have contributed to this book. I'm going to go to TJ and then I'm going to ask you guys some questions, okay? TJ, go ahead and introduce yourself to the audience.
All right. Thanks so much for having me, first of all. So my name is TJ Jemison. I currently live in Florida, but grew up and spent most of my professional career in Vermont, which is the opposite of Florida. And I have kind of a varied past. So I went into education as a educational assistant, like an instructional assistant. And while I was doing my master's degree at the University of Vermont, and I got a consulting teacher, dual certified for consulting teacher and reading coordinator. So you're probably thinking, why is he here talking about math? Well, when I started working in schools and had a caseload of my own students as a special educator, I realized very quickly I was not good at teaching math. Like I was good at doing math myself. So right. I spent the better part of the last 20 or so years developing myself in terms of pedagogical knowledge and content knowledge, I shifted from being a special educator to being an interventionist and a math specialist for really early elementary, K1. And then I became a math coach, and I worked the last 8 years in my district in South Burlington, Vermont as a math coach. So I was working in classrooms, kindergarten through fifth grade across 3 schools, supporting math. And then about 15 years ago, I became a math consultant. And I've traveled around the country and internationally. I've been to Africa and to Bangkok. So I've had lots of really great experiences and had lots of opportunities to interact with tons of teachers all over the place, all over the world. And I keep learning. So I feel like will never stop learning. And I really enjoy kind of helping teachers be better teachers of mathematics. That's kind of my goal in life.
Well, that's very impressive. And thanks so much, TJ, for sharing out. So now I'm going to say a little bit about myself, because I want you guys to know of all of us that is a part of this book collaboration. My name is India. I'm just honored to be among these fabulous authors. My background is in mathematics. I'm not just someone that is inspired about math. I've actually taught in the classroom, grades K-12, been in the trenches with you as educators. I've taught at Title I schools. I've taught gifted learners, taught IB pre-calculus, all the way to students that, didn't know how to graph a line in a pre-calculus classroom. So with that said, I think that also coming from a background where, I was labeled as underserved, I was able to kind of overcome through grit. But not only that, I was able to really see how you can make systems work so that you can have effective teaching. And so with that said, I was so passionate to continue this purpose that I feel I have to really help teachers to develop their skill set as educators to really become better teachers and become more efficient as they're teaching students, so that students can get those gains. And so I've been honored to do different projects, from assistant principal, math coach of Title I schools. I've helped with PBIS coordination. And then, of course, that led me to being, of course, a national education consultant and now an author of textbook companies, currently representing Savvis Learning. So with that said, I'm just honored that we were able to really put this book together. And so with that said, I want to say what motivated us all to be a part of this book. I'm going to ask our authors this question, and I'll start out. I know for me, I was motivated because it was like inside of me, there was just this burning desire to say, what really works? We go to all these conferences, right? We're on planes all over the place, but are we really doing what counts? Like, do we really know what works? And so I've had the opportunity to present with people, to have my work presented by people, even like with Peter, building thinking classrooms, and with Dr. Seda and so many other people. But at the same time, it's like, what is really working? And so I felt like I owed it to just every educator and to the universe just to really put out there what I knew effective teaching practices were. And so with that said, I'm going to transition and ask you now, Debbie, what motivated you to be a part of this book project?
Well, after 35 years of being in education, I was inspired to kind of take everything that I've learned and put it together to find a way to inspire new teachers and veteran teachers who kind of need a refresher and continue to grow and learn, and put it together so that as they are being motivated to learn and grow and be motivated and find their journey in teaching, they can open up this book and find their path.
Excellent. Thanks for sharing. And what about you, TJ?
Well, I mean, anytime someone famous as yourself, asks you to be part of a book, of course. But honestly, you and I met at a conference in South Carolina, and
Yes.
I was really inspired by your story. So, I think any time we can share with colleagues, with other educators, things we've learned, lessons from the field, I get to the privilege of going to hundreds and hundreds, probably thousands over the course of my career of different classrooms. And I can step into a classroom and I can teach kids, and I'll get teachers often saying, wow, you got that kid to talk. Well, that's because I've done a lot of this work, and I know what works. And so I was very honored to be asked to kind of share my knowledge and things I've learned. And also to kind of work with a larger, nice representative group of authors to learn from them at the same time. So it was a no-brainer to say yes.
Well, thank you so much for sharing out, and I appreciate your kind words. Yes, I'm so thankful, and for the times that we met in South Carolina when I literally met TJ, and I just said, "Hey, I need you to take some photos for me." And so, from one photo till now, I mean, it's just been a wonderful relationship, and so. I'm so honored to just be on the stage with people like TJ and Debbie and our new author as well, Suki, who just joined us. She is a new mother as well. Congrats to you, Suki. And
Thank
so
you.
we had the time to squeeze a book in while preparing for motherhood. So, Suki, we were just asking about what motivated people to be a part of this book project. And so what I want to do first is have you introduce yourself to the audience. Tell us who you are and why did you get motivated to be a part of this book?
Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Sukila Curtis, lovingly known as Suki, right? I thank you for this opportunity. I have approximately 10 years teaching experience. I was a reading teacher, an English teacher. I was also an avid instructor and then promoted to an avid campus coordinator. I have taught in Title I schools all the way up to private schools. I taught kindergarten, kindergarten. It's so long. Kindergarten. I taught 9th through 12th grade. I have taught at a religious school, public school, and charter school.
Oh, wow.
So a lot of experience there. To answer why I got involved with this, to be honest, one big reason was you, India. Just, I equate you with feminine success and professional just elitists. So I wanted to be in the room. I wanted to network with you and just become a higher version of myself. So that's one. So thank you for that. My name is on a book. Also, honestly, because of my experience as a teacher, I was honestly the godmother teacher. And when I say that, I was the teacher that not only did a great job educating my students, but I truly cared for them in a way that went beyond the classroom. And I felt like it was really important for someone like me who wasn't teaching for 30 years, or anything like that, but to speak my truth and give my knowledge and expertise based on what I realized actually worked in a classroom. All of the different teaching strategies, but also the relationship portion of what it means to be a teacher.
Right.
So I got that opportunity with this book, and I thank you again. Thank you all so much.
Well, again, congratulations. And, you are a perfect fit. And for you guys listening and you're, interested in this book and to see like, okay, well, what are they really talking about? Is this really worth investing in? I'm telling you, you're having people from all different walks of life tune into this from, the wonderful Susan Valdez, who she's a legislator. So, she's very busy. But the fact that she took time to speak to us about what matters in that space when it comes down to effective teaching is key. And then, of course, my teacher, Miss Wilson from high school, who she is so busy helping people now in health education, helping people to make sure they're making the right decisions with their bodies and how they can take care of themselves. She was able to come and also contribute. So you will be getting golden nuggets of wisdom from these powerhouses as well. And so with that said, I do want to transition into the next question for my authors. So when you hear the title, Effective Teaching Practices, Every Teacher Must Know, what does it mean to you personally? So we'll start with TJ.
So, I mean, like I said earlier, I've had the privilege to kind of go lots of different places. I've taught to 39 fifth graders in inner city Baltimore in a very small room. They were packed in like sardines. I've been to places in Connecticut where maybe there were 18 kids in the room. So, when you are stepping in and needing to teach a class, maybe just you found out that the morning or you knew the week before, um, you have to have strategies that will engage kids and get them to engage with the content that you're wanting to for them to engage with. So for me, it just means there are strategies that really aren't super complicated that any teacher at any grade level can make work for their students. And I think so many teachers that I interact with today were taught in a different way than we are expected to now teach math. Because even young teachers who are first year on the job will tell me, TJ, my experience learning, at least in high school, maybe not elementary, but in high school was the same way I did. And I graduated high school in 1988. I was born in 1970. So it's been a long time since I've been in elementary and middle and high school. And yet many of the teachers I work with, even though they're much younger than me, still had those same experiences. It's very hard to teach in a way that you weren't taught yourself. So I think it's so important that teachers are not only aware of, but also have support to implement and can ask questions and get guidance and coaching. So it's so much more than just the strategy, right? It's also the implementation of the strategy and opportunities to try it out and maybe fail and figure out how to do it better. So that's kind of what it means to me, is like a way to help transition our teaching so that we don't have students leaving our school system not liking math anymore.
I love that. Oh my goodness. Debbie, why don't you chime in? When you hear the title Effective Teaching Practices Every Teacher Must Know, what does it mean to you personally?
I completely agree with TJ. I know when we're having to run into another room, we need those strategies in our back pocket to pull out and always need to learn some more. I also think that we always need help to avoid difficulties and find encouragement through shared experiences. And we can get that in this book. Creating meaningful, creative strategies for engaging students and focusing on building intentional classroom communities where every student feels valued and excited to learn. I feel like those are some things that teachers will be able to get out of this book as well.
Beautiful. That's so powerful. And I agree with you. And I would like Suki to kind of chime in. When you hear of that effective teaching practices every teacher must know, you hear that title. What does that mean to you personally?
It tells me that this book includes multiple perspectives. If you're going to say every teacher must know, that means that the every kind of teacher must be chiming in on this book. Because, like TJ said, you could have teachers that have taught in the 80s, the 90s. You have teachers who taught in 2020. Okay, that's valuable to the reader of of this book. You don't want just one perspective. So like hearing that as a potential reader, if you will, or consumer of this book, I would think to myself, oh, this must be from various valuable perspectives. Now, for me personally, effective teaching practices, to me, every teacher must know, it brings me to understanding that teaching practices are not just about how you or what you teach, I guess you could say, but more so even about how you teach, or what is the relationship like before you start teaching?
Right.
Is it even there to care as a student what you have to say? Most of our students may not care much about what 4 times 7 is.
Right.
For the younger kids. But for me personally, I effectively taught in my practice by being the kind of teacher that I was. And because I tell you, little Timmy, that 4 times 7 is important for you to know, you're going to consider that 4 times 7 is important for you to know because you believe me.
Right.
So effective teaching goes beyond the method to which you're delivering the content. It's also about the relationship between teacher and student, and this book will give you some tips to enhancing that as a teacher.
That's very powerful, Suki, and I'm so grateful that you shared that because it is about the children. And I'm honored that I was able to bring on Dr. Dre Graham, who is also a part of this book. And I can tell you, this prestigious man is an expert in his right. He was a Florida Teacher of the Year. He has been all over speaking, traveling, writing dissertations, and more. And so I would love for Dr. Dre to introduce himself and then tell, when you think, Dr. Dre, of that title, Effective Teaching Practices, Every Teacher Must Know. What does that mean to you personally?
Good evening, everyone. I'm just honored to be here amongst these other authors, and this is always a great opportunity whenever you bring like-minded people who understand that there is, first off, no more noble profession than teaching, and that no other profession exists without teaching. And I think that's something that we often forget is that we are the crux and the foundation of everything as educators. And I'll just piggyback off of what Suki was sharing in that it all starts with relationships. I mean, when we look at when I was trying to draft and outline how I was going to approach my chapter, it all started with you've got to create that culture, that buy-in. You've got to establish the fact that these students are, and that students are things that are used from
You're going in and out, Dre. So if you can write it in the chat, we can share it out just in case. But as we wait for you to get in a
the K
place, I know. Yeah. Can you repeat that, Dre? Because your sound is going in and out. We'll wait for him to repeat. If he can't repeat, I know he was just talking about relationship building, and he was saying how when he was drafting his chapter, he really wanted to be about that. And I know for sure that Dre is the real deal when it comes down to building relationships. I can recall a time that Dre was an assistant principal, and he was literally mentoring some of these young ones that would look up to him, and as a person of diverse backgrounds, it was pretty powerful for him to have that representation in the room. And sometimes you think, oh, I'm just going to fulfill a role, but it's so much deeper than that when we realize that these are building block opportunities that we're having and we're building with students. And, so I'll wait on Dre, but I will take this question and I'll say, what did this mean to me personally? I think for me, this is our way of saying, dear teacher, we are here to help you win the entire year. Here's our book. Take that, dive into it, go for it. Hit the ground running. And I think that no matter who you start out with, whether you start out in Suki's chapter, Dr. Dre's chapter, Debbie's chapter, TJ's chapter, Susan's chapter, Cheryl's chapter, whoever, you're going to find so many valuable tips and nuggets that you need to effectively teach. So, Dr. Dre, you're back with us, Dr. Dre?
I hope so. Can you hear
Yes,
me?
yes, much better. Yes. So go ahead and elaborate, sir, on what you were talking about.
All right, my apologies. I am traveling, um, but just to echo what you were saying, and you kind of you summed it up very well. Just relationships are the foundation of everything, regardless of whether I'm teaching in the K-12 system, if I'm teaching in the collegiate level, or if I'm teaching the elderly. Nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care. We've all heard that adage before. And those relationships actually afford us the opportunity to be able to make lasting impressions. Whenever I had the opportunity to speak with different members of the legislature when I worked for the Florida Department of Education, and I would come in contact with someone who had a negative opinion about education, my very first question to them was, what teacher hurt you? Because
Yeah.
in the same manner that we know and we can identify that teacher who left a positive aspect, a positive outlook on life to us, and that teacher who us as educators want to aspire to be, we also remember that teacher who we would consider as awful and just made you not want to be at school and just made you think less of yourself and have less self-efficacy. And it's important to understand that those relationships are both positive and negative, and it works both ways. And so you start with that foundation, and if teachers understand the power that they hold just in building the relationship, it allows for the other structures that they put in their classes and things to be just that much more successful. Aside from creating that culture, then you've got the direct instruction piece. You have the differentiation so that we're providing an equitable educational experience for students. There's so many other pieces, and it goes back to content knowledge. And as Suki said, it's more than just teaching the content. I know when I was selected as teacher of the year, people would say, "Oh, well, you're the music teacher of the year." I said, "No, I am the teacher of the year.
Yeah.
Music is my medium." And so we have to understand that it's so much more than just the content that we're teaching. But as Suki said, it's having the diverse perspectives available in this book allows for it to reach different people in different places exactly where they are, and hopefully provide some tools so that they can get where they aspire to be.
Beautifully said. And any other authors want to share out? Okay, so then rock stars, I'm going to ask the next question. So, what was the focus? I want to start with Debbie on this one. What was the focus of your chapter, your section, and why is it important for today's teachers?
The focus of my section, a lot of it talks about teaching elementary mathematics because that is what I have been doing for 35 years. But a lot of it is about creating environments where students build understanding together, building communities, building relationships, building understanding together and to strengthen genuine problem-solving skills, creating open-ending tasks to encourage thinking rather than memorization, shifting teachers' roles from being the sole source of knowledge to facilitating collaborative thinking, exploring fresh approaches in math education that differ from traditional methods, addressing diverse needs across different types of learners, and keeping routines running smoothly and managing the day-to-day. So quite a bit of different things throughout the chapter to help teachers learn through routines, strategies, and relationships.
Thanks for sharing out. That was very powerful, especially all the different, strategies and things you were honing in on. Suki, go ahead and lead with this one as well. What was your focus of your chapter, your section that you remember, and why do you think it's important for teachers today?
My focus really was the strategies and structure basically behind building a supportive and engaging environment that just gave way to teaching. How do you foster the kind of environment where learning becomes a byproduct because everyone is engaged, everyone believes in who you say you are? As a teacher, you're like this moral compass. You're just like the way, or at least you're looked at that way. You're a hero, if you're a good teacher. And when you have that and you build on that, students will sit down and learn what they don't want to learn. So my focus really was fostering that environment. I think it's very important because a teacher is like sister to a therapist. And most people don't know that until they've been a teacher.
Yeah.
It's sister or brother to social work.
Yeah.
It's cousin to parenthood. If
Mm-hmm.
you are in that position, you are hearing everything about your kids' lives. You are caring very much about what's going on outside the classroom in order for them to even care what you have to say in the classroom.
Right.
So
Wow.
um, I think it's very important for teachers to understand that we can learn all the strategies in the world. Like Dr. Dre said, we can do that. We've got plenty of books for it, and we will continue to do that because strategies change. But the relationship component will be the gas in the tank.
Yeah.
And that was my focus, and that will always be my focus as an educator.
I'm loving it. Oh my, you're definitely a great fit for it. So I'm honored that you've answered the call as an educator. TJ, go ahead and lead us with this question. So, what was your focus and of your chapter, your section, and why is it important for teachers today?
Sure. So, of course, they stole a lot of the things I talked about as well, which I think is going to be interesting as people read and to hear different voices kind of sharing, versions of the same ideas. But I guess what I would focus on is, as primarily being a math coach the last several years and the role I play in schools and districts, is all around elevating student voices. So finding ways to help teachers, give them strategies, give them ideas about how do you step back from telling and showing and really get ideas to come out of students. And maybe you're dropping a hint or a seed or something that will prompt them. You're certainly asking students to turn and talk and get engaged and to talk more. And you're using a lot of kind of discourse facilitation moves. None of those things, in my opinion, and in my experiences, come naturally to teachers. That's something you have to learn and you have to practice, and you have to have coaching on and get feedback from people and see other people do it. So I'd say those were kind of the common thread for me, was that really elevating student voices. And the more we get students' ideas and voices being heard, I think the more you get students engaging and wanting to be part of their learning.
Beautiful, beautifully said. Dr. Dre, go ahead and share out with us what was your focus of your section, and why is your work and what you spoke about important for teachers today?
It's funny with me coming in after Suki and being able to connect with what she said, and I feel like TJ just like lobbed me a softball for me to knock out of the park right now. And I say that because it's when he talks about that student voice, I would say the heart of my chapter had to do with the ownership. And whenever we provide opportunities for students to take ownership of their learning, then they will have that voice. They will have the vested interest in what they're learning. They will be able to identify the application and the relevance, which then in turns allows them to see how those strategies and how the content will play out in the real world. And that goes from building that culture to having explicit outcomes and the benchmarks and knowing exactly what they're doing, but also being able to identify the why. I tell my teachers that whenever I walk into your classroom, I'm not going to talk to you. I'm not really watching what you're doing. I mean, there are times when you have to go in and you do evaluative feedback and you watch how they're providing their instructional focus and delivery, all that kind of stuff. But with the students, I go and I sit down with a student. There are three things that I want to know. I want to know, what are you learning? Why are you learning it? And how are you going to be assessed? And if they can tell me all of those, if they can answer those three questions, then that tells me that they've found some significance and a connection to the content. But if they don't know why they're doing something, they don't even know what the content is that they're learning, then they definitely won't know how they're going to be able to apply it and use it. And so there's that disconnect where they're not able to take ownership. Our students nowadays, and in this contemporary world, and that's not, I don't say students just to mean K-12 individuals. I go back to the fact we're talking about all learners right now in such a technology rich environment where knowledge quite simply is at our fingertips. The presence of knowledge hasn't increased wisdom, so it's important for them to understand what to do with all of that information. We are both the smartest yet in some ways least competent uh, society right now because everything is so simple. So really having them understand the importance and the why to be able to apply it is paramount when we start talking about the monolith that is education. I mean, we often talk about the fact that we're still doing things the same way we did it 200 years ago. And I go back to our first author who talked about this. It's time to innovate. We've got to find we've got to have ways that the students are thinking differently than they were before, which requires the teachers to approach it in a different, more innovative way that ultimately is tailored to the needs of today's student.
That's so true and powerful. And it makes me think of my chapter, which I talked about growth mindset. I talked about the grit framework because, like you said, Dr. Dre, we have to start being more innovative and doing things differently. Like Debbie even said, the thing is, students feel so overwhelmed at times. They need a sense of motivation. They need to understand their why. But then once they understand their why, they need a method as to how to make it happen. And so when they're able to really take on grit, and I'm able to share in my chapter different ways that students have taken grit surveys. They've understood the grit framework. They understand words like self-efficacy now. They believe in themselves. They understand that they need resilience so that they will persevere no matter what, that they have to have time management so that they can hold themselves accountable. Of course, having that growth mindset as well, so that they can enter this space of education with a different mindset, ready to learn versus coming in complaining or feeling like they're burned out or like they don't even want to try. So for me, I felt like it was so imperative to give teachers a tool that they can use to help to make sure that they can implement education effectively and give students a tool so that they can know for sure that they can be persevering and that they can get the results they need. Why do we need that? We need this. If you looked at the NAEP data, you'll see that our seniors scored at like 22% proficiency, guys. This is not anything to brag about for our nation, especially with all the power and the blessings and the resources we have. We must do better. And I love talking about grit and the growth mindset and things like that because I had the opportunity to work with some experts. And one thing we noticed was that students come to us with many states of being. They might have anxiety, they might have insecurities, they might have a low level of motivation, but we as educators have the power to build those states into traits. And I've talked about this with Peter with building thinking classrooms and other experts where how do you study that? That is us building that tool of grit. It's more than just saying the word grit. It's a tool that we're able to use through the grit framework when we're able to build growth mindset. So students might come in saying, I think I know a little bit of math or I know a little bit of this concept to know I really know I'm competent. I know what I'm doing. That self-efficacy is there. They're responsible with their time. They go from being anxious to being confident, from being, turning assignments in late to turning them in on time and helping their peers. We're building children. We're building the whole child. And grit is it. Grit is what they're going to need. So you'll see that in my chapter, and you'll see some of the different things we've been able to do, even with grit games. You have the grit circle. You have getting gritty with it, and so many other different tools that are available for you. Even a grit Kahoot. And I think all of those things are imperative as we are truly trying to build grit and build our students while effectively teaching each day. So with that said, I now want to jump into another question for you rock stars. And so I want to ask you this. Tell us, can you share a story from your own teaching or leadership experience that connects to your chapter? And
I can take this one.
Go ahead.
Because, the stories. I will keep it as short as possible. I will tell you about two that popped up in my head immediately. As I said, I'm going to be the teacher that's mostly talking about relationships, and of course, my students were academically and intellectually stellar, and through after being in my class before, I've had kids learning at a far below level all the way to advanced placement. And like I said, avid. So I've had that whole entire range, but this is more so relationship experiences that connected to my chapter that is mostly about creating that supportive, engaging environment that just allows learning and is so impactful. I had one student that um, she didn't even start out as my student. I don't even, to this day, I don't know if she just like made her way into my classroom or what, but it was high school. So eventually she just became like a little assistant, and she was always in my classroom. And then she eventually did become my student. Um, we formed a relationship, and after, I don't know, maybe just a few months, she actually um, told me, she said, you know, Miss Roberts, I was Miss Roberts back then before I got married. She said, you know, Miss Roberts, I had planned to, she had planned to harm herself. And she told me that the only reason she didn't do it was because of me.
Oh, wow.
And when she said that, I was absolutely stuck. When when I say stuck, I mean I know being a teacher is, again, you're up here, you're on a pedestal, but I'm just your teacher, you know? And I didn't even think I was saving a life as a
Wow.
teacher. But it was amazing. And after she graduated, we stayed in contact, and she actually ended up having a child on my birthday. And so
Oh,
it was like full circle. It was just like, whoa, this is
yes.
this is major. And to this day, I'm still in contact with her now. She's a
Oh
young
my
adult, and
goodness.
her daughter's beautiful, living her life, you know. So just that relationship that I was forming with her went beyond the academic. She graduated, she went on to live, and she's a productive member of society, but that also is tied into what her relationship was like with her teacher, just one
Yeah.
of her teachers, because she
Wow.
was in high school. So just you alone as a single matchstick could make that much of a difference. There's another whole human being in the world because she's alive and well, and a mother still has her daughter, you know, and so on and so forth. So that's one. And the second one, on the other side of the spectrum, is more so academic. I had a student who was in ninth grade, and I was paying very much attention to his progress, and we were doing diagnostics in class. And I was like, you know, I'm realizing he's really, really quiet, and he's not scoring too well on these diagnostics. When we were all done and it was said and done, he was in ninth grade reading at a third grade level.
Mm,
Third grade.
wow.
So it made me wonder, how did you get here?
Wow.
How did you make it to the ninth grade and no one there? And I can tell you, what was so impactful about this is I decided to speak to his mother, to speak to the APC in the school, to speak to anyone in his like educational team, and figure out how this happened and what we were going to do. Well, unfortunately, his mother was really offended, and it was just an initial shock, I think, but she was so offended. It got really tense. And before I knew it, she had withdrew him from the school and actually placed him in a school that, you know, had special needs teachers and teachers that could teach students on his level. And now he's thriving. I wasn't going to assume to be the right fit for every kind of student. You know, you have to know yourself. And I would have helped progress him, but I refused to let another year go by, and you're going to now be in 10th grade, you know, maybe reading at a fourth grade level or fifth grade level. That's still unacceptable. So in those two experiences, I really kind of lived out the notion that relationship and paying attention matters. Ex- uh, I don't even know the word. It matters so much to the education of our students and their lives.
Oh, well done. And I'm so happy that you still have that young woman in your life. And I think that's like God's way of saying, here
Love
you
her.
go. So
Yes.
I think it's beautiful. TJ, go ahead and share out for us. Tell us a story about your own leadership teaching experience that connects to your chapter.
Sure. So when I thought about this question, I was thinking about an experience where that I had actually in South Carolina. I was supporting a bunch of different schools there at the time, um, and I had done some professional development around number talks, and then I was going back at least once a month. I think it was once a month, and I was coaching and supporting teachers to be implementing them. And I remember this one particular school, there were two teachers, and one was maybe third grade and one was fourth grade, I think. And they were just down the hall from each other. And I remember in my presentation, I said to them, look, this is a routine. It's something that you must be doing every day. And I call it the drip method of
Mhm.
education, where you do little bits of things and over time you see a really huge impact, right? Even though every day or every week, even, you don't necessarily see those shifts. And one of the teachers took that to heart and she literally did a number talk every day with our kids. The other teacher, for whatever reason, was only able to do those like 2 or 3 days a week. And I just remember, as someone who came in once a month, I was able to see their kids fast forwarded every month. And I saw this huge difference with the teacher who religiously did these number talks every day with her kids. And I just saw her kids month after month just grow exponentially. And so to me, that means that teachers matter. What we do as educators matter. And we have the control, we have the power to make impacts in student learning. So I think I bring a lot of that. I didn't think of that story while I was writing these, but in reflecting on, the writing I did for this book, that story kind of came to mind. Just the power of as educators that we have, and how when we think about and use really effective strategies and practices, we can have huge impact on student learning and be shifting and really changing lives of students.
Well, thank you so much, TJ, for sharing out. Debbie, go for it.
Um, One of the things you were just talking about, the building thinking classroom framework, and that is one that I've used in my classes. And it's really powerful the way that you can facilitate that in your classroom. And I feel like it's really changed the way students have been problem solving and learning. And that has had a huge impact on students in the way they learn math, the way they problem solve, the way they're able to collaborate and um, actively work together. They're in randomized groups. They are visibly thinking. You're able to just kind of stand in the middle, watch around the room, watch them problem solve. They work through it together. If they need your help, you can see it from afar. It's great for the inclusive classroom, for equity, because you can see everything. You can go over and support them. So it's really been a game changer for the open-ended tasks and supporting students in the math classroom, but I think you could really use it in all areas.
Beautiful. Beautifully said. Thank you for sharing. I'm so excited about this book. Oh my goodness. Dr. Dre Cubed. Talk to us. What tell us a story.
So I think as opposed to giving some narrative, I'll just talk about the results. I mean, what you're hearing, the common thread with all the authors is the importance of relationships. And having been a high school teacher, I had an opportunity to play a role in a lot of the adult lives of my students, so much so that I've got three godchildren from my students who've had children. And I've been blessed enough to actually serve as the officiant in a handful of their marriages as well. And so that comes from creating that culture, creating that environment where they feel safe and welcomed and free to be themselves, and they bring a part of themselves into the classroom. I guess I will share a quick narrative. When I was blessed to teach at a school that was incredibly diverse, and we had if not every ethnicity around the globe represented, it was pretty close. And we had an opportunity that now we may get in trouble for, but we would have essentially a model UN during lunch. It was our lunch bunch, and we would all come together and we'd eat lunch together and just talk about everything. We would learn about each other's culture, learn about each other's religion, be able to ask questions that were misconceptions and have that verified or refuted in a safe space where we got to learn about each other. And what that did was it created not just a classroom but a family to where we are able to go out. I learned so much about not only the Hebrew faith, but the Jewish people, the Indian religions, the various religions, and their ways of approaching things, the various Asian cultures. I mean, you name it. It's I am the educator I am because of my students and because of the space that they took to educate me on their cultures and the different things. And so that just goes back to the importance of establishing that relationship to not only create more knowledgeable individuals, but just to create better humans. That's ultimately the goal of education, is to create better people, positive contributing members to society.
That's beautiful. And it makes me think of, I have a couple of stories. The one that makes me think of is I had a young man who really needed some grit. He was a junior going into senior year. He had just got in trouble with law enforcement, went to jail, was in juvie, and came back to school. He was behind like 4 credits. And basically, he was like, you know how they call you miss, right? Hey, miss. And, he's like, I really want to graduate, miss, but I don't know. And so I had to work out a plan and put him on kind of like just a sense of accountability where I helped him outline, okay, you have this many weeks left of school. You have this many classes that you have to get caught up. And then you have this many credits you still have to do. This is high school. And long story short, I went to each teacher with that plan. And I said, we are going to help this student, student A, for a lack of, for a sense of privacy. So student A, we're going to help him so that he can graduate. Many of the teachers came to me with a fixed mindset. They're like, no, he's cooked, as the new word, right? He's cooked. And so I was like, well, I mean, he might look cooked, but let's give it a shot and let's see. Let's take a risk. So we put together a plan. The teachers signed off on it. And I told the teachers, I need a little bit of mercy. I need you to embrace this growth mindset, give him another shot at some of these assignments, open up that test again that he missed because he was locked up, things like that. Long story short, teachers worked with us. He got his classes caught up. He took the SAT again. He got the score he needed for college. That student enrolled into FIU. He graduated as a first generation student. And I'm so proud of him because he embodied grit when it came down to having all things stacked against you. I mean, he was kind of at a low of lows. He could have looked at juvie and said, okay, that's it, I'm done. But he decided to also have grit, motivation, and that resilience that he needed to push through so that he could persevere to then go and now be successful. And I'm sure he's graduated from college since then. But, I just thought that it was so imperative that we as leaders remember we are building a whole with children. And that makes me think we were talking about equity and access and parity, which is another area of focus. Parity being what we're doing for our diverse learners, we're doing for students across the board. We're making sure that there's parity and belonging so that no student feels left out, so that all students get the resources and accommodations that they need. And so I would like to have Debbie start this one and tell us, how can the practices that you wrote about in your book be applied to support students from diverse backgrounds and learning needs?
Dr. White, do you mind if I say something to something you just said? Because what you just said is, I just kind of find that I have spent so much time teaching high school that it is different than teaching elementary, which I also taught. But I realized that we all say a lot in the teaching industry, we're trying to get away from the assessment mindset and teaching to the test, and everything's about the test and everything's about standardized testing. And what you just shared to me is just like that in action. We're supposed to remember, and I'm not saying it's easy, because we're also evaluated as teachers based on how well our students are doing. So sometimes it builds that conflict. But we're supposed to care that we can actually and realize we can give the mercy, we can give the space for this student to succeed. We are not here to be blockades to their success just so they can prove themselves to us and and strive so hard just to meet all these. No, like, that is the wrong attitude as a teacher. That's how you become bitter. That's how you don't pay attention to, well, my mom works 3 jobs, so she couldn't help me on the project. I really want to do it. Can I do it in class? Sure, Timmy. Do it in class, because guess what? You're still doing it.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the same spirit as what you just shared. Going to above and beyond for that student, you have undoubtedly changed their life. No matter what they chose to do with their life after you and all those teachers gave him or her that opportunity, you gave them the opportunity where just say yeah, just say yes.
Yeah.
So I don't know the student, but I just want to thank you for doing that. Because I am right now being godmother teacher to a young man that lives in my neighborhood that I see walking around during school hours, and I know for sure he should be in school. And
Yeah.
I've already stopped him, stranger, and
Yeah.
I've already stopped him, like, so when are we enrolling?
Right. That's
So
beautiful.
thank you, because
Well,
that
thank you.
matters.
And I'm glad that that student is in your life, because I hope you can take that story that I just shared and now utilize those same nuggets to help this child. And I would
Yes,
say
I
for
am.
that child, he needs a goal, he needs a dream. So maybe you are the one that can pour into him after this podcast when you see him throughout the week and say, I envision you being a businessman. I envision you, being a wonderful collegiate scholar. I envision and find out from him, what is his interest? What makes him passionate? Every student has a passion. So how do we hone into that passion and help them to thrive in it? And you might be the one, Suki, to give him the dream, to spark that dream and to help him to be gritty and to go for it. So keep me posted on that. But thanks so much for sharing it. And so back to this. So speaking of, students and diverse students and students with learning needs, unique abilities, things like that. Debbie, share with us, how can some of the practices that we've talked about and some of the practices that you wrote about in your chapter, how can they be applied to support students from diverse backgrounds and students that have unique learning needs?
Well, one thing to remember is that building an inclusive classroom isn't a one-time task. It's an ongoing process, and it takes creativity, consistency, a real commitment to making sure every student feels valued.
Beautiful.
And it's not just about teaching content, it's about creating a classroom community where students know they are seen, heard, and supported daily. A strategy that I talk about in the book is one that I found powerful. It's, again, I got it from Peter Liljedahl, who also did the Building Thinking Classroom framework. But this one is a tiered level of practice that I implemented in my classroom, and it worked wonderfully. And this one gives students choice, and we use like peppers, mild, medium, and spicy. And basically the mild was like scaffolded practice. The medium was like applying knowledge and working on comprehension. And then the spicy was for higher order challenges and analyzing, evaluation, and synthesis. And the students, we do like a mini lesson, and then the students can go and choose their level of practice. And it's really great because it gives the students freedom of choice. It gives them the ability to work together, to collaborate, multi-level entry points, so that students get to self-select their level. It empowers them to take ownership of their learning, meet themselves where they're comfortable, and still pushes them to grow. They're more engaged. They feel safe trying their work. It encourages them to collaborate, share strategies, explain their thinking, and deepen everyone's understanding. The practice keeps learning equitable, and it allows the teacher to walk around, have conversations, and then pull small groups when necessary. So those are some ways to be able to work with your students and keep your classroom equitable.
Well, thank you for sharing out. And TJ, share with us, how do you think your practices that you spoke about, how can they be used to support diverse students and students with unique learning needs?
Sure. So I think it's important as we talk about this question to recognize some facts, right? And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I'm right. In the last census, it was the first time in the census that the population of students K-12 in the United States, there was a higher percentage of students of color than white students.
That's correct.
So we have shifting population in our country. However, if we look at the data around teaching staff, I believe since the 70s, we've gotten whiter as a teaching staff in this country. So, that's a challenge in that if you're working primarily with students that have different lived experiences with you, come from different cultures, there's research that suggests that students who match the background and experience and culture and race of the teacher that's teaching tend to do better in their classes. So we can't just say we want our teaching staff in the United States to mimic our population, right? Hopefully that happens over time, but as it is right now, we've gotten whiter as a teaching staff. So I think it's really important to, first of all, recognize we all have biases, to recognize that. And so the two kind of practical things that I write about in my chapter is the first thing I do is anytime I'm introducing a task, a problem, an image, a story, the first thing I'm asking is, how does this provide access and equity for students? So I want to have that mindset and think about that and brainstorm that. The other side of that, and I call these kind of like bookends, the other side of that is, how might this thing that I'm introducing unintentionally, how might it be marginalizing to a student or students, right? Because we all have blinders on. And so I think the simple act of asking those questions won't be perfect. It won't mean that we'll never put something in front of students that might marginalize them, but it hopefully would minimize that. I also talk a little bit about Dr. Rudine Bushup, who talked about mirrors and windows. And so she talked about it in the context of literature, literacy in books. Of course, I've written other books that combine literacy and mathematics. But I think we can bring those ideas to mathematics as well. So when I'm thinking about problems that I put in front of students, if I'm thinking about a theme for a unit, are they providing mirrors for students so they see themselves and their lived experiences, so they feel like, oh, I'm part of this learning? And do they have opportunities to also see windows into others' lived experience? So maybe someone that has a different background than me. If I'm a student who lives in the city, maybe I learn about kids on a farm and I'm doing math around that. Or vice versa, where I was teaching in Vermont, it was very rural. To talk about subways and buses and city skyscrapers, that was foreign to a lot of the students I worked with. But it doesn't mean we can't introduce them to that. So I think those are some of the ideas I played with in the chapters I've written.
Okay, well, thank you for sharing. That's very enlightening. And I know that with the work you've done across the nation, you're definitely making a difference. So thank you, TJ. Stuki, go for it. So, how can these practices be applied that you wrote about and that you spoke about to serve students with diverse backgrounds and unique learning needs?
Can I first say thank you, TJ, sir, because just thinking like that helps all of our students to even hold yourself to that bar. Oh, I get emotional. Okay, even holding yourself to that bar means you care enough to acknowledge the disparity. You you care enough to acknowledge that these are the kids I care for, but this is who they see in front of them. Now I've got to work on, the trust. I've got to work on the experiences. Are they going to believe I share some of the experiences just because I don't look like them? And what can I bring to the table because maybe I'm not from where you're from? Like, diversity is not just about pulling up the impoverished. It's also about shedding the abundance or the how can you say, the more privileged way of living and life and literacy and wealth and knowledge and all the good things. Well, let's get in one room together and put it all together. It's not, it's not a negative word. And sometimes I think in this country we've kind of put diversity, we've kind of made it synonymous to like pity. You know what I'm saying? Like, oh, we're picking up a marginalized group and let's diversify. It's like, no, you're also diversifying if you bring someone really wealthy into my low income school. You're diversifying. So I just want to say thank you for even caring enough to acknowledge that, and for all the work that you have done to bridge that gap. For me, absolutely. Um, when it comes to thinking about diverse backgrounds and learning needs and practices, it makes me think about in my chapter the types of learners. I just keep it really basic. Um, I'm very aware that if you don't show me something, I don't know what you're talking about. So I need to see, right? And sometimes hearing it is different. Sometimes touching is different. So, and there are more ways of learning than even those three. But acknowledging that you want to realize that as an educator, that if your job is to convey the content and to assess that they understood, it's okay to do it in a way that works for them. It's not a dig to you. It Don't look at it as more work. It's just the work. The work is to this kid. You have to do it this way, and that's okay for your diverse population. Also, I am lucky enough that in the spaces of diverse classrooms, I'm already diverse, if you will. So I'm already able to step into that space, and because I looked like a large group of my students, I was able to kind of step into a space that was, I'm not going to say easier, but it was just it gelled differently, with the classroom. So that may not be looked at as a practice, but me standing on my experiences and being able to say, I come from where you come from. And even though I come from where you come from, don't tell me that you can't get 100 on this test. Don't tell me that you can't go to college because I went to college. So sometimes the practice of realizing that in your diverse class you are like your student really helps for that sense of community. And TJ mentioned something just about the makeup of our teachers versus our student population. And I remember specifically one year as a teacher, I had open house, and actually it was my first year teaching, and I was setting up my classroom, and all I heard from outside of my classroom was, my teacher's Black. And this was like a screaming young girl that was so excited And I was in pieces. She did not know that I was like a 24-year-old first time teacher. And to me, it was like, oh my gosh, this is something more than I thought, you know? So I keep that in mind in practicing realizing diversity in the classroom, you know. And lastly, I will say exposing them, exposing your students, regardless of the makeup of your kids, whether we're talking about economics or we're talking about race or we're talking about intellect. I have had students in my classroom. I just got finished last year. I retired from teaching, and I taught second grade. And I have a kid that absolutely soared at math, and it was a self-contained classroom, but he soared at math and not so well at ELA. And then I realized that he was always trying to kind of run the students. And even though he gave me pushback, he's one of those kids, you know, he would ask to help me do this and ask to help me do that in the classroom. So I made him like the classroom manager. And when I tell you I could get him to do anything after that, so just realizing that in order to get to him intellectually and for him to do the work I needed him to do and excel and try on the spelling test, I had to acknowledge the fact that he was someone who wanted to deal with the computers and wipe off the desks and, you know, lead the line to lunch, you know, and it was just realizing that kind of allowed him to reach his potential.
Beautifully said, and thank you so much for sharing your heart and your experience of these practices. And Dr. Dre, we want to hear from you. How have these practices that you wrote about in the book, how do they support students that come from diverse backgrounds and students with unique learning needs?
Well, no, many of us may be familiar with a quote that George Bush made, which is accredited to him, but it was really written by his speechwriter. But it's the soft bigotry of low expectations. And one of the things that we talk about in my chapter is just the importance of having explicit and continuously high expectations for all students. And one of the common misconceptions in education is people, teachers specifically, will say, "Oh, you know what? All kids can learn. All kids can learn." And the problem with that statement is that it deflects responsibility. And so, something that I have preached to my teachers and to really anyone who will listen is that we've got to modify that statement. It shouldn't be that we believe all students can learn. As an educator, we have to believe that all students can learn as a result of our instruction. And that turns it back around on us because it's our responsibility to present the material in differentiated ways so that it is able to be grasped by all students, regardless of their creed, their background, their race, their religion, their orientation, their identity. We have to provide the entry points and the access for our students to have meaningful and relevant interactions with the content and the material. And so as we set up these structures and maintain these high expectations, then we scaffold so that all of our students can rise to the occasion. So it's using these different elements that are not only in my chapter, but that are included throughout the entirety of the book, by different pathways to be able to reach all students. And that is the key takeaway. It all means all, not the ones who look like me or the ones who don't look like me. And it means all. So every student has an opportunity to learn because of my ability, my capability to instruct.
I love that. You know, and the thing, Dr. Dre, I'm going to tag team you on that one because that highlights a lot of our conversations we've recently had in general about reaching all learners. We love the work of equity and access, but equity and access, it does not necessarily cover everyone if we make it focused only on a diverse lens or on students, you know, with various, you know, unique abilities and things. We have to cover every single student, even your tier one students. And this is why I focused on parity, which is being able to do those equitable practices for all of your learners, as well as grit. Because with that, with parity and grit, you can develop a sense of belonging for students in the classroom where they know they belong, they know they can achieve, and the most important part, the student believes that their teacher believes in them. And that's the part that there's been a big disconnect that I've seen over the years. Students come to this class, they have low motivation, they're anxious, they're thinking about the horrible experiences that they had before. Maybe they don't have parental support. So being able to come in and to know I'm in a safe place, my teacher is the one cheering harder for me than I'm cheering for myself. I've got something to prove to her and or him. And not only that, they've connected this math lesson or whatever through relevancy to what I want to become when I grow up. So it's keeping those building blocks connected so that students can see you're not just learning a lesson, you're creating a future, and it starts today. And we are here to help you. We are a vessel being used, and we do that through our effective teaching practices. So, I'm so grateful that you guys shared out. And so I kind of want to start wrapping this up. So I'm going to ask this last question before we get your information. And that question is going to be, if you could sum up your contribution in one sentence for teachers listening today, what would it be? And I'll start with Suki.
Wow, I was not expecting to go first because I really want to think about this.
Take your time.
Summing up your contribution in one sentence. Wow.
Well, Suki, I can give you some think time if you like.
Yes, Dr. Graham, please.
I'll just
Thank
jump
you.
in because I think I summed it up in my previous statement in that it's all students can learn as a result of our instruction. And when we as educators take that ownership, it really is a source of empowerment to really know that we are world changers. And that was my slogan, my motto whenever I traveled around the state for Teacher of the Year, is that we are world changers and we are making that impact at the ground level every day. You never know who you're teaching. You could be teaching the next president of the United States. You could be
True.
teaching the next governor of your state, the next mayor of your city. And what type of impression, what type of person does that student become because of their interaction with us as teachers? And really quick, just to give Suki a little bit more time, there was something you said in the previous statement, India, that I wanted to piggyback off on, and that's the fact that when we think of equity, a lot of people think only to the remediation side. And a lot of people have that misconception that equity means I'm taking something from students who
Right.
quote unquote don't need it to give to the students who are in need. But equity is a spectrum and it also includes the students who need enrichment. And so when we talk about that, it goes back to the all means all. We're talking about all students across the board. And in order to provide them with that equitable educational experience, we have to understand that all students can learn as a result of our instruction.
That's so powerful. Dr. Drake Cube, thank you so much for sharing out. I will wait on Suki's response. So let me go to Debbie. And Debbie, why don't you share out for us? If you could sum up your contribution in one sentence for teachers listening today, what would it be?
Approaches that are shared to foster classroom communities where every student feels seen, heard, and valued.
Beautiful. Oh my. Thank you so much for that. Now, let's go to TJ. If you could sum up your contribution in one sentence for teachers listening today, what would it be?
Well, I could just say ditto Dr. Dre, but so my and maybe I'll just say kind of the same thing he did with different words. I was saying basically that I'm hoping the legacy of this book and the strategies we've talked about there really help educators to shift their instruction to have impact on schools and classrooms and ultimately the students they work with, right? We're hoping these strategies have impact on students and the learning that they do in schools.
I love it. Now, Suki, you're in the hot seat. So if you could sum up your contribution in one sentence for teachers listening today, what would it be?
Because I learned to love, my students love to learn.
Oh, wow. That's powerful. And we are so stealing that.
Yeah. See,
Wow.
patience is a virtue. Good things come to those who
Yeah.
wait.
Oh my
But yes, because I learned to love them, they loved to learn from me.
That's beautiful.
There's
And it's so
nothing
true.
more powerful. There's no more powerful weapon in my arsenal. I'm not gonna lie. I've taken a lot away from this meeting with you all. Are fantastic, and a lot of things that Dr. Graham said. I feel like we're the same person. It's kind of weird. Like,
Love
no,
it.
really, like what? Like I'm like down to the hair. I'm like, are we the same person? Um, but I really I really couldn't even hone in on any particular intellectual or instructional strategy that was just so effective. No, I could make an effective lesson with paper clips and push pins in a matter of 10 minutes before class started because it wasn't about that. And once I employed just being someone that they knew for a fact, like you said, Dr. White, loved them, cared for them, was cheering for them. They were cheering for me. So if I was sweating bullets teaching them because I didn't know my objective from my assessment, they didn't know. They were just with it because I was teaching them. So that would be my sentence.
Well, thank you so much for sharing. I think if I left mine, it would, if I left with a sentence for all educators, it would be before you burn out, take grit with you and implement these effective teaching strategies. Be intentional at implementing these effective strategies because they do work and you got the grit that it takes to make it happen. So that's what I would say to all those rock stars out there listening. And so, guys, thank you so much for joining me on this amazing podcast for launching our brand new book, Effective Teaching Practices That Every Teacher Must Know. Now, I know the audience is going to want to hear from each of you. How can we reach you? So we will start with TJ and then we'll go to Debbie, Dr. Dre, and Suki. Tell us, how can we reach you for those that would like to reach out to you for professional development? They might want you to be a keynote speaker, do some coaching in their school districts, or just have a conversation and consult with them on how they can help with effective teaching practices. So how can they reach you, TJ?
Sure. So I don't have a website yet, but they can get in touch with me on email there at teachvt@gmail. I'm also on social media as an educator at Twitter at teachvt or on Blue Sky at tjmath. So those are the three best ways to get me.
Well, thank you, TJ, for that. And Debbie, go for it.
You can reach me at email perrd84@gmail.com or on Twitter X at Mrs. Perry D.
Okay.
And that's all I have right now.
Is it MRS or MS?
MRS Perry D.
Excellent. Okay. You guys got that? Next, Dr. Dre, how can we reach you? Dr. Dre, you're up.
Sorry. Yep. No. Sorry. I'm here. I was typing in the chat, and it's just going from the chat to the back to the mic. I was trying to get it done before Debbie was done talking, and she beat me to it. But the easiest way would be via email. I do have a website. It's real4ed.com, and it's reimagining equity and learning. And I think it's just so important that we really define that word as what it is and not let it be the misunderstood villain of education that it has become. But you can reach out to at dregraham at real4ed.com. I do have different workshops that I've worked with various counties around the nation for doing keynotes as well, professional development workshops, you name it. We definitely make sure to get out and provide a tailor-made experience for whatever the educational needs are. But would love to hear from whoever would love to collaborate.
Thank you for sharing. And Suki, go for it. How can they contact you?
Well, This has definitely tantalized my desire to public speak or to get in the classroom and teach teachers about relationships. I just, you always think about strategies, but I'm thinking now about how important it is to be a part of them learning about relationships before they even start the school year. Especially in some of your um, rougher schools, if you want to say, or even some of the strategies that you need in the really fancy schools, because you need
Yes.
some strategies out there, because that's another world as well. To reach me, my phone number is 813-516-4700. That's 813-516-4700. And my email address is sukilasbusiness@gmail.com.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. And yes, I'm sure people will be tapping you guys. And so if you guys want to reach me, here's my social media handles. I tell you every time I get on the podcast, I have a million of them. Good luck. Find your voice. And of course, you can check out the website, www.india-white.com. And my email is scrolling across the bottom of the screen. It is india.white.123@gmail.com. So you can email me and ask, for whatever services you need, whether it's consulting, speaking. If you want a couple of us to come out and represent your district, we would be honored. If you want all of us, just reach us. There's also the Honorable Susan Valdez, who is busy creating laws for us. Thank you, Susan. We love you for that. She could not be here because she is a rock star doing that work. But her email address is right there on the screen, susanvaldez82@gmail.com. And then, of course, my high school teacher, she also was tied up in some things. And, she has definitely left her mark. And I would not be here had it not been for her. But you can reach out to me directly if you're wanting to hear from her as well, because she has so many different things she's doing now in the health education space. So with that said, guys, thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in and hearing us out here on our official book launch of the effective teaching practices that every teacher must know. And I just want to say that, I appreciate all of you guys coming on to the Let's Get Gritty podcast. Until next time, stay gritty. See ya.